September 29, 1944, at the Richlin Luftwaffe Test Center in Germany, Hauptmann Werner Dernbrack settled into the cockpit of the Silver fighter aircraft, his hands gripping a control stick that felt foreign after years flying Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs. The captured P-51D Mustang sat on the tarmac like a trophy, its American star markings painted over with German crosses. The aircraft had belly landed near Aachen 3 weeks earlier, the pilot wounded but the machine remarkably intact. Dernbrack was one of Germany's most experienced test pilots. He had evaluated every fighter the Luftwaffe possessed. He had flown captured Spitfires, Airacobras, and Thunderbolts. He knew exactly what German fighters could and couldn't do. His job was to find weaknesses, to give German pilots the tactical knowledge they needed to defeat this increasingly common adversary. The Packard-built Merlin engine fired with a deep, smooth rumble that immediately felt different from the harsh mechanical sound of German power plants. As Dernbrack taxied toward the runway, he reviewed what Luftwaffe intelligence had told him about the Mustang. Long range, certainly. That much was obvious from the bomber escort missions now reaching Berlin. Adequate speed, probably inferior to German fighters in a turning fight, like most American aircraft. What Hauptmann Dernbrack didn't know as he advanced the throttle for takeoff was that in 90 minutes, he would land this aircraft and write a report so devastating to German fighter confidence that it would be classified as secret and restricted to senior Luftwaffe commanders only. The words he would type that evening would confirm what many German pilots already suspected, but few dared say aloud. Germany no longer possessed a fighter that could match the Mustang on equal terms. The mathematics of aerial superiority were about to be written not in combat reports or strategic assessments, but in the brutally honest technical evaluation of an enemy aircraft that proved superior in nearly every measurable category. The evaluation would force the Luftwaffe to confront an uncomfortable truth. American industrial engineering had created a fighter that German aeronautical science, despite all its vaunted expertise, had failed to equal. The story of how Germany came to test the P-51D begins with the aircraft's remarkable development history. North American aviation had designed the original P-51 in just 117 days in 1940, responding to a British Purchasing Commission's urgent need for fighters. The initial version, powered by an Allison engine, showed promise but limited high-altitude performance. The transformation came when British engineers married the North American airframe to the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. The result was extraordinary. A fighter with speed, range, and high-altitude performance that exceeded anything flying in 1942. When Packard began producing the Merlin under license in America, mass production of what would become the P-51D began in earnest. By late 1943, Mustangs were appearing over Germany in increasing numbers. Luftwaffe pilots encountered them first as bomber escorts, flying routes that should have been impossible. The combat radius exceeded 850 miles with external tanks. The Mustang could escort bombers to Berlin and back from English bases, a feat no other fighter could match. German intelligence tracked the Mustangs spread through the 8th Air Force. The 354th Fighter Group received P-51Bs in December 1943. By spring 1944, entire fighter groups were converting from P-47 Thunderbolts and P-38 Lightnings to Mustangs. By D-Day, over 500 Mustangs operated from English bases. By September 1944, the number exceeded 1,000. Luftwaffe pilots reported contradictory impressions. The Mustang was fast, that much was certain. It climbed well at altitude, but was it maneuverable? Could it dogfight? Different pilots gave different answers. Some claimed the Messerschmitt Bf-109G could outturn it. Others weren't sure. The Focke-Wulf FW-190 pilots reported the Mustang could run away from them at will. What Germany needed was systematic testing, not combat impressions colored by adrenaline and survival instinct, but careful instrumented evaluation by professional test pilots who could separate emotion from data. The opportunity came on September 5, 1944, when Second Lieutenant Robert H. Schaufelberger of the 361st Fighter Group encountered mechanical trouble during a mission over Germany. His P-51D's engine began losing power. Rather than risk capture by bailing out, Schaufelberger attempted a dead-stick landing in a field near Aachen. The landing was rough but successful. German troops reached the aircraft within minutes. Schaufelberger was captured, but the Mustang, though damaged, was salvageable. Within hours, a recovery team from Richlin received orders to retrieve the fighter. Within a week, German mechanics had repaired the damage, replaced damaged components, and declared the aircraft airworthy. Richlin was Germany's equivalent to Wright Field in America or the Royal Aircraft Establishment at Farnborough in Britain. Located in northern Germany, the facility tested all Luftwaffe aircraft types. The best test pilots in Germany served there. They had access to instrumentation that could measure performance with scientific precision. 3 pilots would fly the Mustang extensively: Hauptmann Werner Dernbrack, Oberst Robert Kowalewski, and Lieutenant Hans-Werner Lurch. Between them, they had thousands of hours in German fighters and considerable experience with captured Allied aircraft. Dernbrack's first takeoff in the Mustang revealed immediately that American design philosophy differed fundamentally from German practice. The P-51D was easier to fly than any German fighter he had experienced. The controls were light, responsive, but not twitchy. The aircraft felt stable, almost forgiving. German fighters demanded constant attention. The Bf-109 had a narrow landing gear that made ground handling treacherous. The FW-190's radial engine created torque effects that required careful rudder management during takeoff. Both aircraft would punish pilot inattention with a ground loop or worse. The Mustang felt almost benign by comparison. The wide-track landing gear provided stability. The torque was manageable. Visibility from the bubble canopy exceeded anything German fighters offered. The pilot could see in every direction without blind spots. For a combat aircraft, it was remarkably civilized. But Dernbrack wasn't here to evaluate comfort. As the Mustang climbed through 5,000 feet, he began systematic testing. First, straight and level speed runs at various altitudes. The results were measured by timing runs over known distances, with airspeed indicators cross-referenced against ground speed calculations. At 10,000 feet, the Mustang achieved 390 miles per hour in level flight. At 20,000 feet, 425 miles per hour. At 25,000 feet, where the Packard Merlin's 2-stage supercharger delivered maximum boost, the airspeed indicator showed 437 miles per hour true airspeed. Dernbrack's mental comparison was immediate and damning. The Bf-109G6, Germany's standard fighter, achieved perhaps 386 miles per hour at 22,000 feet. The FW-190A8 reached 408 miles per hour at 20,000 feet. The Mustang was 30 to 50 miles per hour faster at combat altitudes, and the speed advantage increased with altitude. More troubling still, the Mustang achieved these speeds cleanly. No special boost settings, no emergency power, just normal maximum continuous power. The German fighters reached their maximum speeds only with time-limited emergency boost settings that risked engine damage. Next came climb tests. Dernbrack established the Mustang at sea level and advanced the throttle to maximum power, nodding the rate of climb on the variometer. The P-51D climbed at 3,475 feet per minute initially, settling to 2,000 feet per minute at 20,000 feet. Again, the comparison favored the American fighter. The Bf-109G6 climbed at perhaps 3,300 feet per minute initially, but the rate fell off more rapidly at altitude. The FW-190A8 climbed slower still. In a combat situation, the Mustang could outclimb German interceptors to altitude, giving American pilots the tactical advantage of height. The most critical test came next: maneuverability. This was where German pilots believed their fighters held advantage. The Bf-109 had legendary turning ability. The FW-190 could roll faster than any Allied fighter. Surely the Mustang, designed for range and speed, would sacrifice agility. Dernbrack established the fighter at 15,000 feet and 300 miles per hour, then hauled the stick back hard into a maximum rate turn. The Mustang responded instantly, banking hard left as G-forces pressed him into the seat. He held the turn, watching the airspeed bleed off, feeling for the stall warning. The Mustang turned tighter than expected. Dernbrack completed a 360-degree turn and checked his stopwatch. 21 seconds for a full circle at maximum performance. He repeated the test at different speeds and altitudes, each time noting turn radius and turn rate. The results troubled him deeply. The Mustang's turn performance was comparable to the BF-109G and superior to the FW-190A at most speeds and altitudes. It wasn't quite as tight turning as the 109 at low speeds, but at typical combat speeds above 250 miles per hour, the difference was negligible. Roll rate testing provided German fighters their only clear advantage. Dernbrack snapped the stick hard left, then hard right, timing how quickly the aircraft transitioned from bank to bank. The Mustang rolled respectably, about 90 degrees per second, but the FW-190 could roll faster, reaching 120 degrees per second. This was a real advantage in combat, allowing German pilots to reverse direction quickly. But one advantage wasn't enough. Dernbrack continued testing, evaluating stall characteristics, dive performance, control response at various speeds. Each test added data to an emerging picture that he found increasingly difficult to dismiss. The Mustang didn't just exceed German fighters in some categories. It met or exceeded them in almost every category that mattered in combat. Speed, advantage Mustang. Climb, advantage Mustang. Turn, roughly equal. Dive, advantage Mustang. Range, overwhelming advantage Mustang. High altitude performance, advantage Mustang. After 90 minutes, Dernbrack landed at Richlin and taxied to the test facility hangar. He shut down the Merlin engine and sat in the cockpit for a moment, processing what he had experienced. That evening, he began writing his report. The official Richlin evaluation report, portions of which survived the war and were captured by Allied forces, contained technical data and assessments that confirmed American design superiority. The document was clinical, professional, and devastating to German confidence. The performance summary listed: maximum speed, 437 miles per hour at 25,000 feet, 703 kilometers per hour. Climb rate, 3,475 feet per minute at sea level, 17.7 meters per second. Service ceiling, 41,900 feet, 12,770 meters. Range, 950 miles. Combat radius with drop tanks, 1,530 kilometers. And armament, 6.50 caliber machine guns with 1,880 rounds total. Comparison with the Bf-109G6 noted that the Messerschmitt was 30 to 50 miles per hour slower at all combat altitudes. Climb rate was comparable below 15,000 feet but inferior above that altitude. Turn performance was marginally better for the 109 at low speeds but equal at typical combat speeds. The Bf-109's only clear advantages were roll rate and rate of climb below 10,000 feet. The range comparison was almost comical. The Bf-109G6 had a combat radius of perhaps 350 miles with a drop tank. The Mustang could fly nearly 3 times as far and still fight effectively. Comparison with the FW-190A8 found the Focke-Wulf compared even less favorably. The report noted the 190 was 25 to 35 miles per hour slower at altitude. Climb rate was inferior at all altitudes. Turn performance was inferior above 250 miles per hour. The FW-190's advantages were limited to roll rate and ruggedness. But the report went beyond raw performance numbers. It assessed combat implications with brutal honesty. The combat assessment stated, "In combat at altitude," the report stated, "the P-51D can dictate the terms of engagement. Its speed advantage allows American pilots to attack when advantageous and disengage at will. German fighters cannot force combat if the Mustang pilot chooses to avoid it. It continued. The P-51D's high-altitude performance is superior to all German production fighters. At altitudes above 25,000 feet, where American bombers operate, the Mustang holds every advantage. Our fighters struggle at these altitudes while the Mustang performs optimally. Most concerning is the aircraft's range. The P-51D can escort bombers to any target in Germany and return to England. Our fighters must operate near their bases, limiting tactical flexibility. The strategic implications are grave. American fighters now own the skis over Germany. The Richlin evaluation included pilot impressions that were equally revealing. These subjective assessments, from men who had flown every German fighter type, provided context that raw numbers couldn't capture. Hauptmann-Dernbrack wrote, "The P-51D is the finest fighter aircraft I have flown. Its handling is superb, responsive but stable, powerful but not difficult to control. Visibility exceeds any German fighter. The aircraft forgives pilot errors that would be fatal in our fighters." He added, "Most troubling is the overall package. We have fighters with individual advantages. The 109's climb, the 190's roll rate, the Ta-152's high-altitude performance. But no German fighter combines all desirable qualities like the Mustang. It sacrifices nothing for its extraordinary range." Oberst Kowalewski, who flew the Mustang on multiple test flights, noted, "American engineering philosophy differs fundamentally from ours. We maximize individual performance characteristics. They optimize the complete system. The result is an aircraft with no significant weaknesses. The build quality is remarkable. Components fit precisely. Controls operate smoothly. Everything functions as designed. This is mass production that maintains quality, something we have struggled to achieve." Lieutenant Lurch, youngest of the three test pilots, provided perhaps the most damning assessment. "After flying the P-51D, I understand why we are losing air superiority. This aircraft represents a generation beyond our current fighters. More concerning, America is producing them in enormous numbers while our production declines. The tactical situation is untenable. American pilots in inferior aircraft could choose to fight or flee based on tactical advantage. American pilots in Mustangs hold advantage in nearly every situation. Our pilots are brave and skilled, but they cannot overcome this technical superiority." The Richlin evaluation inadvertently highlighted fundamental differences between American and German aircraft design philosophy. These differences explained why the Mustang succeeded where German fighters fell short. The German approach traditionally optimized specific performance characteristics, often at the expense of others. The Bf-109 exemplified this: extraordinary climb rate and turn performance, but narrow landing gear, poor visibility, and limited range. The FW-190 offered different trade-offs: excellent roll rate and ruggedness, but mediocre climb and turn performance. German fighters were specialists, optimized for specific tactical scenarios. The problem was that modern air warfare required generalists that could handle diverse situations. The American approach saw North American aviation's designers pursuing balanced performance across all important characteristics. The P-51D wasn't the absolute best at any single thing, but it was excellent at everything that mattered. The design featured a laminar flow wing which reduced drag, increasing speed and range, an efficient cooling system, a ducted radiator that actually produced slight thrust, a two-stage supercharger which maintained power at high altitude, and an internal fuel capacity of 269 gallons without drop tanks. More importantly, the design prioritized pilot survival and mission effectiveness. The bubble canopy provided 360-degree visibility. The wide-track landing gear reduced accidents. The 6.50 caliber machine guns delivered devastating firepower with 400 rounds per gun. Beyond the technical evaluation, German intelligence provided context that made the Mustang's superiority even more troubling. While German test pilots were admitting the P-51D outclassed their fighters, American factories were producing Mustangs in numbers that defied German comprehension. North American Aviation's Inglewood, California plant was producing P-51Ds at a rate exceeding 400 aircraft per month by late 1944. A second production line in Dallas, Texas, added another 200-plus aircraft monthly. Total production would eventually exceed 15,000 Mustangs of all variants. By comparison, Germany produced approximately 14,000 Bf-109s of all types in 1944, peak production despite Allied bombing and resource shortages. The United States was building more of one superior fighter type than Germany could build of its main fighter type, while simultaneously producing thousands of P-47 Thunderbolts, P-38 Lightnings, and naval fighters. The production gap meant that even if Germany could design an equal fighter, which the Me-262 jet arguably was, they couldn't produce it in sufficient numbers to matter strategically. America could absorb losses and continue operations. Germany could not. The Richlin evaluation's findings matched combat experience from late 1944. Luftwaffe pilots facing Mustangs over Germany confirmed what the test pilots had measured. Major Heinz Baer, who would finish the war with 220 victories, acknowledged in post-war interviews. The Mustang was a beautiful fighter, fast, maneuverable at altitude, and flown by well-trained pilots. In a 109 or 190, you had to have tactical advantage to survive an encounter. Equal terms meant you would probably lose. Oberst Johann Steinhoff wrote in his memoirs, by late 1944, American fighters on the skis over Germany. The Mustang particularly was feared because it could be anywhere at any time. Its range meant no German airfield was safe, no training area secure. The statistical reality supported these qualitative assessments. In 1944, the P-51 Mustang achieved a kill-to-loss ratio exceeding 10-to-1 in air-to-air combat. Mustang pilots claimed approximately 4,950 aerial victories, while losing fewer than 500 aircraft in air combat across all theaters. The Luftwaffe's loss rates told the inverse story. By October 1944, German fighter losses exceeded production. Experienced pilots were being killed faster than they could be replaced. New pilots reached operational units with minimal training, often fewer than 100 flight hours total, and died within their first few missions. Germany's response to Allied air superiority centered on the Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first operational jet fighter. The Me-262 was faster than any Allied piston-engine fighter, capable of 540 miles per hour, 100 miles per hour faster than the Mustang. But the jet's advantages were limited. It turned poorly, consumed fuel voraciously, and required long takeoffs and landings that made it vulnerable. The engines were unreliable, lasting perhaps 10 to 25 hours before requiring replacement. Most critically, production was limited. Only about 1,400 were built, and fewer than 200 were operational at any one time. The Richlin test pilots flew the Me-262 alongside the captured Mustang. Their assessment acknowledged the jet's speed advantage, but noted it wasn't enough. The Me-262 could run from Mustangs, but couldn't force them to fight. It could attack bombers, but was vulnerable during approach and departure. Most importantly, it was too few and too late. The Richlin evaluation report included a strategic assessment section that connected aircraft performance to the broader air war. This section, written by senior Luftwaffe technical officers, made uncomfortable reading for German commanders. The P-51D's combat radius of 950 miles means American fighters can escort bombers to any target in German-controlled territory and return to English bases. This fundamentally changes strategic bombing from an expensive attrition battle to a sustainable operation. Previously, unescorted bombers suffered unsustainable losses, often 10% or more per mission. Escorted bomber losses have fallen below 2%. At this rate, America can sustain bombing operations indefinitely while our fighter force bleeds to death. The Mustang's high-altitude performance compounds our problems. Our fighters struggle to reach bomber altitudes. When they do arrive, they must fight through Mustang escorts while already at disadvantage. The tactical situation is nearly hopeless. Most concerning is the production disparity. America produces Mustangs faster than we can destroy them. We destroy Mustangs faster than we can replace our own losses. The mathematics of attrition favor the enemy completely. The report concluded with a recommendation that was part professional assessment, part desperate plea. Development of jet fighters must receive absolute priority. Conventional piston engine fighters cannot compete with the P-51D on equal terms. Only jets offer technological advantage sufficient to overcome American numerical superiority. After the war, surviving German pilots and engineers provided additional perspectives on the Mustang that confirmed the Richlin evaluation's accuracy. Adolf Galland, who commanded the Luftwaffe fighter force from late 1941 to January 1945, wrote in his memoir, "The P-51 Mustang was the finest all-around fighter of the war. It combined range, speed, altitude performance, and maneuverability better than any other aircraft." When Mustangs began escorting American bombers to Berlin, I knew we had lost the air war. Willie Messerschmitt, designer of the Bf-109, admitted in post-war interviews, "The Americans took a different approach to fighter design. They used the best engine available, the Merlin, and built an airframe that extracted maximum performance from it. The result was better than what we achieved." The Richlin evaluation documented specific technical features that gave the Mustang its edge. These weren't secret technologies or revolutionary breakthroughs, but rather excellent engineering execution applied to every system. The laminar flow wing maintained smooth airflow farther back along the chord, reducing drag by approximately 20% at cruise speeds. German engineers struggled to manufacture wings to the precise tolerances required for this concept. The cooling system was a ducted radiator positioned under the fuselage, carefully shaped to accelerate cooling air and recover energy. The Meredith effect, so efficient it actually produced slight net thrust. The fuel system was extensive, carrying 269 gallons of internal fuel and over 485 gallons with two 108-gallon drop tanks, a range difference that was literally 3-to-1 over the Bf-109 G6. The Packard Merlin V1650 engine, with its two-stage, two-speed supercharger, produced 1,490 horsepower at normal settings and 1,720 horsepower at war emergency power, maintaining power at high altitude where German single-stage superchargers faded. The engine's reliability was also significantly better than German engines. The armament of 6.50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns were reliable, had a high rate of fire, 750 to 850 rounds per minute per gun, and the concentrated nose mounting provided excellent convergence. Beyond technical superiority, the Richlin evaluation inadvertently highlighted human factors that amplified the Mustang's advantages. American pilot training provided 200 to 300 hours of flight training, extensive gunnery practice, and formation flying before reaching operational units. German training collapsed due to fuel shortages and losses, with new pilots often arriving with 100 hours or less of total flight time. American tactical doctrine evolved continuously, leveraging the Mustang's performance, while German tactics stagnated as experienced pilots were killed and not replaced. American logistics and maintenance meant plentiful spare parts and high aircraft availability rates, typically exceeding 75%, while German availability fell to 50% or less due to shortages. The Richlin evaluation concluded with a summary that combined technical analysis with strategic realism. The final paragraph, reportedly written by Oberst Robert Kowalewski, captured both professional admiration and tactical despair. The North American P-51D Mustang represents the culmination of American aeronautical engineering and industrial capability. It combines performance, range, reliability, and ease of manufacture in a package that exceeds all German production fighters in overall combat effectiveness. Individual German aircraft types may exceed the Mustang in specific performance categories, but none match its complete capability. More significantly, American production vastly exceeds our own. They build excellent fighters in overwhelming numbers. We build good fighters in inadequate quantities. This disparity, combined with the Mustang's technical superiority, creates an insurmountable challenge. Unless jet fighter production can be accelerated dramatically and sufficient fuel secured, the Luftwaffe cannot regain air superiority over Germany. The P-51D and similar Allied aircraft have achieved such dominance that conventional responses are insufficient. Professional assessment compels acknowledgement. The P-51D Mustang is the finest all-around fighter aircraft currently in service with any air force. Our pilots face an aircraft superior to their own, flown by well-trained opponents, produced in numbers we cannot match, and supported by logistics we cannot disrupt. This is the reality of our situation. The report was classified and distributed only to senior Luftwaffe commanders and the Reich Air Ministry. Its conclusions were too demoralizing to share widely, but the test pilots at Richlin knew the truth. They had flown the enemy's fighter and found it superior to their own. The Richlin evaluation of the P-51D Mustang stands as one of the most honest technical assessments of enemy equipment produced during World War II. The document, portions of which survived the war, influenced post-war aviation development significantly. European and American designers studied what made the Mustang successful, incorporating its lessons into jet-age fighters, with the emphasis on balanced performance, pilot-friendly handling, and reliable systems becoming standard design goals. For the Luftwaffe test pilots who flew the Mustang in 1944, the experience was both professionally fascinating and strategically depressing. The mathematics of aerial superiority had been written in the test data, fuel consumption charts, and performance curves generated at Richlin. The conclusion was inescapable. American industrial engineering had created a fighter that German aeronautical science, despite all its expertise and tradition, could not match. Hauptmann Werner Dernbrack survived the war, and in a 1978 interview, he recalled his time flying the captured Mustang. It was the finest fighter I ever flew. In different circumstances, I would have loved to fly it in combat. Instead, I flew it knowing that thousands like it were helping to defeat Germany. The irony was not lost on any of us at Richlin. The Luftwaffe test pilots had climbed into a captured enemy fighter expecting to find weaknesses to exploit. Instead, they discovered a machine so well designed, so completely executed, that it redefined what a fighter aircraft could be. Their honest assessment forced acknowledgement of a difficult truth. In this category of warfare, at this moment in history, American design had achieved superiority. The war would end 8 months later. The Mustang would fly in the victory flypasts, and the Luftwaffe pilots who had tested it would remember the moment when they understood, with absolute clarity, that they faced not just a better aircraft, but the product of a design philosophy and industrial system they could not defeat. That conclusion, written by Germany's best test pilots after flying their enemy's best fighter, stands as testament to the P-51 Mustang's place in aviation history, not just as an excellent aircraft, but as proof that American industrial engineering could match or exceed the world's best aeronautical traditions when fully applied to the challenge.